Good evening. I would like to call to order the May the 4th, 2026 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all school board members are present. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the LWSD website and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the board meeting as well. The public are always welcome to email the board at boardmembers@lwsd.org. Director Liberty, would you like to read the land acknowledgement this evening?
Yes, be happy to. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of the district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the May the 4th, 2026 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Yocum and seconded by Director LaLiberty to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We have one recognition this evening for National School Nurse Day. Director Mikov, would you like to read that proclamation?
Whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in school, and whereas all students have the right to have their health needs safely met while in the school setting, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day, and whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and in ensuring student academic success for more than 100 years, and whereas school nurses are professional nurses who advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by serving on the front lines and providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children. Therefore, we, the members of the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 6th, 2026 as School Nurse Day in Lake Washington School District.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be public comment. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board. We appreciate and value community engagement. We dedicate 30 minutes for public comment, with each speaker provided up to 2 minutes. This is a time for the board to listen. Please do not expect a response to your comments. Speakers will be called in the order of sign up. If there is not enough time to get to all individuals that have signed up, you may email your comments to boardmembers@lwsd.org. If you have materials to share with the board, please place them in the basket next to the podium. A timer will be displayed to help manage time. It will turn yellow at 30 seconds remaining and red at 10 seconds. The microphone will be turned off shortly after time expires, so please conclude your remarks promptly. We ask everyone to model respectful discourse. Please refrain from audience comments or prolonged applause so we can hear from as many speakers as possible. After public comment concludes, those not staying for the remainder of the meeting are asked to exit quietly. Public comment sign-up is available on the district website and closes at noon on the day of the meeting. Speakers may designate another person in advance of the deadline. Substitutions at the meeting cannot be accommodated. Finally, the board does not address personnel matters during meetings. We encourage individuals to first work with school or district staff to resolve concerns. Please also refrain from naming students unless you are their parent or guardian, or if you are a student. Public comment will now begin at 7:06 p.m. The first speaker is Arpita Maheshwari.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. My name is Arpita Maheshwari, and I am a parent of a student who is 4-5 full-time Quest student at Ella Baker this year. I'm here this evening to respectfully ask that you reconsider the decision to move the 4th and 5th grade FTQ cohort from Ella Baker to Elcott Elementary next school year. I want to begin by acknowledging that the district is navigating genuinely difficult enrollment and budget trade-offs. It is with those very same considerations in mind that I'd like to share why this particular move gives our families pause. To start, Alcott is already doing an admirable job absorbing higher than enrollment while working through the disruptions of an active construction project. Layering an additional cohort on top of that, along with the portable classrooms it would require, adds pressure to a campus that is already stretched. Ella Baker, by contrast, is currently operating below the district's primary enrollment average and has the physical room to host these students comfortably without compounding the strain on Alcott. There is also a budget angle worth considering. Baker sits at natural crossroads with the Wilder, Baker, and Rosa Park families who feed into this program. Shifting the cohort out of Alcott lengthens the commute for many of these families, which will almost certainly increase the demand for district-funded busing. In a year where we are all looking for efficiencies, this move risks introducing an unavoidable transportation cost. And finally, setting logistics aside, these are children in their final 2 years of elementary school. Keeping them at Baker protects the community they have built together, spares working families disruption, and gives these students the steadiness they need to grow into leaders heading off to middle school. I'd urge the board to weigh both the resource picture and the student experience and keep the 4-5 FTQ classroom to Ella Baker next year. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Margaret Rogan.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Rogan, and I'm a member of the Eastlake Leadership Team, the Special Education Department Chair, and a co-teacher in both math and English classrooms. I'm here today asking for the ability of Eastlake to create a policy that will allow the schools to restrict personal devices and require the use of school-issued laptops in the classroom. Eastlake Leadership Team has requested this type of policy, and we've been told that the district will not allow the school to develop such a policy. We have been told that while we can require the students to use their school-issued laptops for any single assignment, we cannot require it for all assignments. Every secondary student currently has a school-issued laptop, and with that comes a consistency of experience. We all know the student laptops are not the best that money can buy, but they are sufficient and they are effective. Additionally, the district is currently deciding between 2 programs to replace Dino, our current student monitoring software, which means that we're about to spend significant money on a program that is only as effective as its access to student computers. These programs allow teachers to remotely limit websites and programs during class, share student work to the entire class, pause all students for clarification or a teaching moment, and move all students to a specific program or site. But none of these features will work on students' personal computers. With personal devices in the classroom, teachers are unable to use these programs effectively. Teachers design lessons around the tools and capabilities of these school-issued laptops. A single, standardized device ensures that lessons run smoothly and that all students can fully participate without technical barriers. This will be even more significant as the district moves to an all-online math curriculum beginning next school year. By requiring school-issued laptops during the school day, we create a standardized platform where expectations are clear, support is embedded, and distractions are easier to manage. This policy isn't about limiting choice, it's about maximizing the value of the resources already provided, protecting students, and creating the best possible classroom environment for learning. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Madhura Misar.
Hello everyone, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Madhura Misar and my daughter is currently a 4th grader at full-time Quest at Ella Baker. Most of my speech is going to be questions to express my concerns and disappointment with the proposed move from Baker to Alcott. Why are we moving kids in these communities to a school that does not allow feeder pattern to Timberline? I can go on for a few minutes just on this topic on how this impacts kids socially and emotionally. Why do we not see equity for Quest kids compared to general education kids in terms of school assignments and stable feeder pattern? Why is there no transparency on data on number of kids mapping to their respective home school, and transparency on how and why this decision was taken? Why decision was communicated so late when there are no choices but to either accept the move or leave Quest program? Why are we moving these kids to a school that is overcrowded, under construction, and with little to no access to playground activities? Why are we not using newly built Ella Baker School that has been hosting Quest so well for years? How do we justify spending tax dollars spent on building these schools only to leave those empty while overcrowding the other schools? From numbers we gathered, we think that more than half the Quest Alcott numbers are coming from our neighborhood schools. Then why not bus Quest kids from Alcott to Ella Baker and avoid complexities of hosting in under construction school? Why are we taking for granted that these academically gifted kids will also be emotionally resilient in navigating instability that is forced upon them with these decisions? How can we make these choices how can we make these choices that are wasting resources, causing unnecessary transportation, while teaching kids to act environmentally conscious? I'm urging you to keep the Quest program at Baker, prioritize stable feeder program for these schools, and provide more transparency on the decision making. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next speaker is Martha Damon.
Good evening. I'm Martha Damon. I'm an English teacher and a child development teacher at Eastlake High School. And I'm here to address a critical challenge our secondary schools face: the lack of district-wide directive on device usage during class time. Currently, teachers can individually require district-issued laptops, but without a unified policy, consistency is difficulty to achieve. Consider our success with cell phone management. Because we have a clear district policy, consistent enforcement, and designated storage, students now comply without virtually any resistance. It's simply how we do things. We need to do the same thing for school-issued laptops. A district-wide policy requiring school-issued devices during class time addresses several critical issues: student online safety, equitable access to district resources, on-task behavior, and learning environment quality. It's also an accountability issue. These devices were purchased with levy dollars, specifically for student learning. Additionally, personal devices create a real problem. Teachers cannot monitor them using their district-wide software, currently Dino, next year something else. Students cannot access school printers or required assessments. Worse, students can access harmful content, games, and social media that we're legally required to restrict under COPA. When students finally use their school laptops, like during SBA, or they often need 20 minutes to update them because they haven't used them in 6 months. A unified policy eliminates confusion, reduces teacher burden, and establishes a consistent school culture around devices. I strongly urge you to develop a district-wide policy on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Avni Hansoti.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Avni Hansodi, and my younger daughter is in 3rd grade full-time Quest. Her homeschool is Ella Baker, and she's currently at Horseman. I'm here to request district respectfully to reconsider their decision to change full-time Quest location from Ella Baker to Alcott. We are being told that this move was driven by enrollment declines and budget shortfalls. However, a closer look at the data reveals it might not be completely true. Alcott, in fact, has less Quest enrollment than Ella Baker and Rosa Parks. The objective here is also to keep Timberline feeder schools together and not separating kids from their community. Social emotional well-being is so critical for kids at this age. Last year, my daughter was assigned to Alcott initially with the same reasons, but at the last minute, she was moved to Horseman because Alcott was overcrowded. She went from I love school to I don't want to go to school. As a mother, this was the hardest year for me, to watch my kid in tears every morning to fight to go to school. Please consider that kids thrive when they're happy and not emotionally deprived. If we look at the numbers, Ella Baker, Rosa Parks, and Wilder combined has more than 46 kids this year without any new enrollment, which is enough to form a 2-district approved classes. Ella Baker also has more than 5 empty classrooms, and a 4th and 5th quest is currently being hosted there, meaning we have the space to operate without any increase in budget. On the contrast, Elkhart is overcrowded and not centrally located, plus it has a reported problems with heater this year and no easy access to bathroom and sink in the portable class. It also lacks the modern facilities that our kids benefit today. A major drawback is also it's going to be under construction and half of the playground will be inaccessible. Moving the kids to Elkhart will not only add longer exhausting bus commute for kids, but also spike transportation cost. If program remains at Ella Baker, district saves on transportation and it is within walking distance. Since we have the space and enrollment to remain in budget exactly where we are, there's not a single reason which makes Elkhart better hosting site than Ella Baker. I request you to look at the actual data.
Please wrap up.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kaya Misar.
Hello everyone, my name is Kaya and I'm a full-time Quest 4th grader at Ella Baker Elementary. Thank you everybody for coming here today and giving us a chance to voice our concerns. Me and my classmates have been extremely sad and upset ever since we got the news. I feel very emotional at the thought of not being at Ella Baker and having Miss Connor as my teacher next year. My friends and I always talk about the things we will get to do as 5th graders at Ella Baker, like leading lots of projects, Baker Bear Television, 5th grade camp, theater week, being buddy mentors to junior class kids we have connected with, field trips, and graduating at Ella Baker. I feel very worried that lots of non-Quest friends that I have grown up with in my community will not be as close to me anymore when we meet back at middle school. It makes no sense to me that we must move to a new school for 1 year and then go to middle school right after. It makes it so much harder to readjust. It would flow much smoother if we just stayed at Ella Baker. My teachers like Miss Connor and Miss Thompson, my principal Miss Blanco, other staff and PTSA at my school have worked so hard to build lots of amazing things at Ella Baker, and it's sad that their hard work to keep Quest classes at Ella Baker is going to be wasted. Could you tell us why they're moving us to a school that will be under construction, needing us to use portable units, having not enough access to playground, and spending 1.5 hours every day in school buses, while Ella Baker has everything we need for Quest classes? Isn't it an environmentally irresponsible choice for us not to walk to school or use already built classrooms, but rather use bus transport and portable units? I almost feel like it would have been awesome if I wasn't a Quest kid. Then I wouldn't be forced to move away from my school and friend. Why are we being treated unfairly, even though we work so hard in our projects, academics, and as change makers at Ella Baker? Ella Baker is a school that I've been going to since I was a silly 5-year-old kindergartner. I walk to school with my friends every day, rain, snow, or shine. I walk by myself to my school friends' homes for playdates or school projects. I have always dreamed of graduating from Ella Baker with my friends and teachers, and not being able to do that makes me very sad. I kindly request you to keep full-time Quest at Baker and spare us the heartbreaking decision at either letting go of the Quest program that is exciting and challenging, or letting go of the school, friends, and teachers that I love so much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next is Ria Desai.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Ria Desai and I am a 3rd grade Quest student at Man. My home school is Ella Baker. I'm here today to ask you to please keep 4th and 5th Quest at Ella Baker. I know the board has a lot to think about, like money and space, but I want you to think about what this move means for us, the kids. Our school isn't just a building, it's our community. When you move us out of the school, you break that bond. It's heartbreaking to leave your teachers, classrooms, and your friends behind. And I can vouch for all of this to be true as I experienced this myself. Last year, I was so excited when I qualified for full-time Quest, but the same year, 2-3 Quest was moved out of Ella Baker. I was assigned to Alcott initially, but at last minute, I was moved to Horace Mann due to Alcott being overcrowded. I was the only kid from Ella Baker who was moved to Horace Mann. A big bus comes just to pick me up. Initially, I was okay, as at least I got the regular class at Horace Mann instead of tiny portable class at Alcott. But soon the long bus route took a toll on me. Imagine being tired before the school day even starts, making it hard to focus or to learn. Being away from my friends and school, I couldn't feel the sense of belonging, which killed my excitement to go to school, and every morning I was in tears and didn't want to go. Getting qualified for Quest almost started to feel like a punishment at this point. Due to the long bus ride, I also couldn't do any after-school clubs or play sports. School just became a place I visit, not a place I belong. Only thing that kept me going was the fact I was coming back to my home school for 4th grade. But now if you move 4 or 5 Quest out of Ella Baker, I won't be able to face another hard year, and all other kids will face the same hardship I did, which can be totally avoided. I'm hoping district goal is to keep their students' needs above anything else. So kindly keep the 4th and 5th Quest program at Ella Baker and keep us where we belong. Thank you very much.
Next up is Arya Gautam.
Hi, my name is Arya Gautam and I'm an Ella Baker Quest student. I'm here today to share why staying at Ella Baker matters so much to us and why we hope our voices are truly heard. We don't just go to Ella Baker, but we identify as Ella Baker students. This school is part of who we are. We have grown up here, built meaningful friendships, and created a strong sense of community that feels like home. For many of us, we have always dreamed of graduating from Ella Baker. We have watched older students reach their final year, and we've looked forward to that moment for ourselves. We have also been excited for all the special 5th grade traditions, like overnight camp and the kickball game against the teachers, and our graduation ceremony. These are not just events to us, but they are milestones we have been waiting for and imagining for a long time. We truly don't want to miss out on these meaningful experiences. We believe it would make more sense for Alcott's Quest program to move to Ella Baker. With construction happening at Alcott, it would be more efficient to relocate students from a school under construction to one that's ready for learning. Students learn best in comfortable and familiar environments. Being in a school under construction can be noisy and distracting, especially for students who are not used to the environment. This can make it harder for students to focus and feel at ease. We, the Ella Baker 4 to 5 Quest class, have formed strong friendships and deep connections that cannot be replaced. This is our community, and this is where we belong. We are sharing our thoughts because we truly value our school and hope to finish our journey where it began, at Ella Baker. We sincerely hope you will consider our concerns and revisit the decision to move us out of Ella Baker. Thank you for listening.
My apologies to Mira Galat for skipping over you. Thank you. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Mira, and today I'd like to share a few points on how moving Quest to Alcott might be the wrong decision. For one, on the day we got the news that Quest was being moved, kids in my class came to school upset and were unable to focus on classwork. Aside from our academic status, students affected by this decision would most likely be upset and wondering what their life would be like if they had stayed at Baker. If we go to Alcott, we will leave behind people who we have made strong bonds with. Also, many of us have been anticipating 5th grade camp and other activities, but when we go to Alcott, we will not get to do them. It also makes no sense that we must move to a new school for 1 year and then go to middle school right after. It makes it so much harder to readjust. It would be much easier if we just stayed at Ella Baker. Alcott has 617 students, while Ella Baker only has 403. This shows that Ella Baker is a better school to move to because it is less crowded. I'm also a bit confused on why we need to move to Alcott, which is under construction, needing us to use portable units and spend extra time getting to school and back when there are many established facilities and empty classrooms at Baker.
Also, my friends and I have been going to Baker since we were kindies. We all wanted to graduate from 5th grade and go to middle school. Once you move us to Alcott, our dreams of graduating from Baker will never be fulfilled. Because of these reasons, I kindly ask you to reconsider your decision about moving Quest to Alcott, because this decision will either force us to drop Quest or the teachers and friends we love. Thank you for listening to me today.
Next is Devin Doshi.
Hi, my name is Devin and I'm a 4th grader in Ella Baker. I also happen to be in the full-time Quest program. I moved from Wilder to Baker to be part of Quest, so I already know what it feels like to change schools. That's why I wanted to share about how I feel about being asked to move again. This year, I've worked really hard to build relationships at Baker. That didn't happen quickly. It took me months to feel connected. I've made a lot of friends, not just in Quest, and I built relationships with my principal, my counselor, and my teachers. At recess, we all play together and it feels like one community. That's why I feel really disappointed about moving next year. I was hoping to finish my last year of elementary school in the place I worked so hard to be a part of. Instead, I'm being asked to start over again, and then again in middle school. Also, I don't think it's fair that Quest students have to move schools so often when other students don't. It makes me feel like we're being treated differently. Some of my friends start to think that Quest is a bad thing because of all the moving, and that does not feel right. My sister already had to switch schools so that we can be together, and now we might be separate again. That also doesn't feel fair to my family. I hope that in the future, families know what they're signing up for, because people plan their lives around school. I think we matter, and I hope you think we matter too. Please show us that we matter by not pulling us away from our school. Thank you.
Next is Sean Doshi.
Hi, I'm Sean and I go to Timberline Middle School. I'm also in the Quest program. My home elementary school was Wilder, but I went to L. Baker for full-time Quest. I was lucky. I got to stay there for 4 years and didn't have to move around. This is one of the main reasons that I'm doing well at Timberline, socially and academically. Middle school can be hard socially. A lot of kids already know each other from elementary school, and friend groups are already formed. I had a great transition because I still have friends from Wilder and then made more in Baker. In fact, over half of my classes are with people I already know. This made the transition a lot easier. Quest is also a small program, so I had to make an effort to build friendships outside of it. This takes time and confidence, and not every student is comfortable doing that right away. That is why I'm concerned about moving elementary Quest students to a different school. They build friendships there, but those might not be the same students they go to middle school with, so they could lose those connections right when they need them most. Middle school already comes with a lot of changes, new classes, new schedules, and more responsibility. Not having a strong friend group can make going in even harder. This makes me wonder, why is the Quest program moving to a school that doesn't go to Timberline? I was lucky to have consistency, and it helped me. I don't think future students should miss out on that. I hope you think about how these decisions affect students not just next year, but in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Anthara Karthik.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Antara, and I am a 4th grade Quest student at Ella Baker Elementary. I'm here to ask you to allow our 5th grade year to remain at Ella Baker. Ella Baker is a brand new school. It is only 8 years old, and it was built with modern technology and spaces that help us succeed in the Quest program. We have spent our elementary years building a culture here, and we feel safe and settled in this environment. Moving us to Alcott Elementary right now does not just mean changing schools, it means moving into a 40-year-old building that is currently going through major reconstruction. While we know Alcott is known to be a very good school, Asking us to leave our home school to spend our final year in a construction zone feels like a lot to manage. It means noise, distractions, and less stability during a year when we should be focused on our most advanced projects. Also, if we move to Alcott, all the kids that bike to school daily and save fuel and the environment will not be able to bike the distance. If we move to Alcott, we will have to learn a new building, new rules, and new routines, only to leave it all behind a few months later for middle school. Moving twice in 2 years is more complicated because you must get used to one school and then the other. That takes away from our learning time. I am asking the board for one more year at Ella Baker. Please allow the current 4th grade Quest class to stay at Ella Baker for one more year. This lets the district move forward with its long-term plan while letting us graduate as Baker Bears in the school we call home. We are ready for the challenge of 5th grade, and we want to tackle it in the best possible environment. Please let us finish what we started. Thank you.
This concludes public comment. Thank you to everyone who took the time to engage with the board this evening, especially you students. As we continue with the meeting, we ask that all attendees remain respectful and follow standard meeting protocols, including minimizing side conversations and keeping voices low. If you choose to leave at this time, please do so quietly and in an orderly manner so the board can continue its meeting. Thank you again for your participation. Here we go. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the May the 4th, 2026 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Mikov and seconded by Director Yoakum. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Poll, I will. Director Yoakum?
Yes.
Director Richter?
Yes.
Director Mikov?
Yes.
Vice President La Liberty?
Yes. Yes.
And President Guthrie?
Yes, motion carries. Superintendent Holman, will you please review the donations?
I will. It's actually astonishing that at every meeting we have donations that just continue to come in from our community. Tonight in the board's packet you have over $73,000 in donations from Community Parent Group, Dickinson PTSA, Muir PTSA, Environmental and Adventure School. They're designated as a parent-teacher organization, so a PTO. Inglewood Middle School, PTSA, the Wolves Football Association, International Community School, PTSA, and Lake Washington High School, PTSA. So just want to say thank you to each of those groups for supporting our schools and our students.
Thank you. Dr. Holman, do you or staff or Director Yoakum, do you have a legislative update?
I do not.
Did you want to mention about the WASDA positions that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, I do. Let me find this really quickly, sorry. I just received an email from Logan, who is staff at WASDA. Oh gosh, what's his position? Director of Strategic Advocacy, thank you. I wanted to find the right title there. And just communicating that the, funding Safe, Healthy, Contemporary School Facilities was, received a due pass from the Legislative Committee. And in addition, so did the fiscal notes and unfunded mandates. That is it for now.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Tonight we will monitor Results 1, Mission of Lake Washington School District, one of our 3 results policies. Following the presentation, the board will have an opportunity for questions and comments. Dr. Holman, will you please present a summary of the monitoring report?
Yes, I will. And so tonight, typically my team presents our results policies with Deputy Superintendent Beebe not being here tonight. It's actually fun to dive into these data and really understand from a results perspective where our students are. there's a key data point in here that we actually didn't talk about when we previously met. And I'm kind of excited to point it out to the board, because when we think about how are we making progress, we're a high achieving district. Progress is slow. And I remember the first time in a board meeting, we looked at our graduation results over, I think it was a 10 or 12 year period. And all of a sudden it was like illuminating, because you could just see it was this slow but steady progress over 10 to 12 years. And so there are some bright spots, but we also know that there are noted exceptions. There are consistent equity gaps that we continue to work towards closing, because our commitment is to each and every student having access to a rigorous experience and achieving high results in our school district. I shared this with the board, but I think it's important to note a number of years back, the state moved from having 2 certificates related to graduation to 1. There used to be a certificate of individual achievement and a certificate of academic achievement. When they moved to the graduation pathways, I believe that was the kind of the impetus for making this change. They went to a single certificate for all students, knowing that students would qualify for that certificate through various pathways. And graduation pathways you can meet through SBA, through a CTE pathway. So there's many different ways that you can meet the requirement. And so in that, there's a single graduation certificate for students. During the interim, though, COVID happened, a number of waivers occurred, and the graduating class of 2025 graduated without those substantive waivers in place. And the fact that we saw really consistent and slight uptick, I believe, from the prior year actually demonstrates a couple of things. One, the amount of work that our schools have been doing over years. It isn't just you just hurry at the end just to get kids over the graduation line. If students are off track to graduate, our schools are identifying that early in a student's career and doing a tremendous amount of work to help them stay kind of on course. Something I didn't mention when we met about Results 1, we shifted the entire system last year. And while the change to the 7 to 6 period day occurred this year, the amount of, I'll just say, emotional challenge and baggage that staff were carrying, many of our students were carrying, it was just a heavy load. And we instituted our schools talking about things other than our kids. And it was, we know the reasons why that shift was made. And we know when we do that it pulls our focus away from really our core work. And so even with that, our schools, our staff did a tremendous job of really supporting students through what we actually thought would be a possible dip in our data. And so those are just a few elements in the 2025 graduation data. That's not going to show up anywhere, but it's kind of the ancillary variables that surround it. Our schools, as they look at these data, they've already started to think about and they've implemented some changes at the beginning of this school year. You all know about the Flex Academy at Juanita High School. Lake Washington High School adopted a version of that. Redmond High School is thinking about adopting a version of that. We know what that meant for our students in the Flex Academy. I believe the number was about 40 students whom otherwise would not have graduated high school walked across the stage and graduated from Juanita High School in the Lake Washington School District. We also know that as we passed over the reinvestment FTE to our schools, we also gave them really a model for them to think through, how are we going to allocate these funds in a way that addresses historical inequities. And so our schools looked at historically what are the classes that students had high failure rates. Where do we know students trip up? We'll see tonight, like what are some of the most important elements in terms of graduation? Well, 9th grade credit accrual is one of those things that is closely tied to on-time graduation rate. And that has nothing to do with, do you have a 6th period day or a 7th period day? If you get off track to graduate early in your high school career, the likelihood of graduation declines tremendously. And so our schools took that reinvestment and really thought deeply about how do we continue to support our students in a deeper and more meaningful way with this very unique opportunity of having additional FTE. And so the results I share with you tonight, our schools have been actively working to address and continue the progress that they're making with our students. And that's just the first slide. So one of the questions that I think was an important question to ask, thank you, Director Yoakum, is where are we today and where are we going in relation to the re-envisioning of our mission and vision? It was something that I had stated that the intent was to redo that work this year. But currently, the board is monitoring R1 as written. It's based on our current mission and vision and our current indicators of compliance that we have in the policy and in the report. Where are we going? I think it's important to note that as we adopted the strategic framework, it took some time for that to start to become, and it is still becoming, a part of our district culture. The language, the intention, the mindset around that. And so it never felt like the right and opportune time to just jump in and let's revision ourselves. And so I think the opportunity, we're there. I think the opportunity is now to start that work. And I didn't mention it during our work plan discussion tonight, but depending on timing next year, that could also inform some of the board's work related to policy. And so, first things first is kind of telling the story to our community about here's where we're going with our mission and vision. Starting to collect some initial information, having a work group that starts to unpack that, figuring out what types of listening sessions, how do we engage to really do a good and thorough job of re-envisioning our mission and vision of Lake Washington School District. Why am I talking about that? Well, results one is the evaluation of the district's mission and vision. And so it's important to note it is something that is on our radar, on our work plan, and will be kind of an influential next step for the board as you think about results one. You've updated results 3, you've updated results 2, and R1 is going to be next for a pretty substantive update. Okay. So as we think about who is the class of 2025, this is a visual that you've seen for a number of years. It always helps me orient, and so I'm going to walk through it. We had 2,256 students start in Lake Washington School District in 9th grade. During the 4-year period of 2021 through 2025, we had 235 students transfer into this cohort. And I say this cohort because the way you calculate a graduation rate is a cohort-based model. And so any student, no matter where they're residing right now, if they started 9th grade in 2021 and they transfer into our system, that is the cohort that they're calculated in for graduation. During that time, we had 217 students transfer out. There are 73 students that are categorized as technically dropouts, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later in the presentation. Of those students, starting 9th grade, plus transfer in, minus transfer out, 2,143 students graduated with the class of 2025 within 4 years for a graduation rate of 94.2. And we had 58 students, of which I believe half of those students are receiving special education services, continued. And so they would then be counted in future years for extended graduation rates. There's other ways to look at our class of 2025 as well. Again, this is a data set that's in the official monitoring report. But when we think about our transfer in students, we know that that is one element that is kind of a significant impact for students, particularly with credit accrual, transfer of credits, and it affects the potential for on-time graduation. You can see here the transfer in students. The kind of the demographic makeup is different than our students that started 9th grade in Lake Washington. Some key features there as I look at transfer ins. Almost 37% of our students transferring in receive multilingual services. And we know that our students in high school who are receiving multilingual services, and I think for any one of us that would be true as well, attempting to go into a rigorous academic experience and then succeed in that realm is that is a tall task. And so knowing that transfer-ins happen all throughout the high school experience, and if a student is coming to us in 11th grade as a junior and they're credit deficient and they're receiving multilingual services, like these things really do start stacking up against students. That's why our extended graduation rates are so important, because our mission isn't about graduate on time. Our mission is about students graduating, because we know how important that is. And so these are just data and numbers that tell a story, but it doesn't change the fact that our commitment to each and every student that are in our charge, whether they started in 9th grade or transferred in at the beginning of their senior year, is to support them towards graduation. So our indicators of compliance, we look at on-time graduation rate, extended graduation rate. We also look at the percent of students not dropping out during high school. We look at our post-secondary enrollment. And again, that's one of those indicators that in my perfect world, we would have a great data source for every last place a student goes. After high school, I would love to know where students are going, if they're going into the military, or if they're going right into career. Or so there's many different things that our students do. This data set only captures post-secondary enrollment within 2 years of graduation. Participation in and successful participation in at least one dual credit course. Again, that's another key indicator for future and post-secondary success. And then that last indicator there is 9th graders earning credit for all courses attempted. So when we look at our on-time graduation rate, you can see, I would say it's stable at this point. 93, 94% over the last, 6-7 years, to me is very stable. We know that our students that enrolled in our schools in 9th grade, their graduation rate is around 95.1%. Our students that enrolled or transferred in is around 84.2%. And so, again, it's one of the strongest, I would say, causal relationships is student migration and the impact that that has on our students. And so just continuing to pay attention to that, knowing that alignment of credits, interpretation of transcripts, just adjusting to high school, belonging, peers, relationships, like all of those things affect a student's ability to graduate on time, particularly when migration is one of those factors. When we disaggregate our data, again, we have a very stable graduation rate, and to have a stable graduation rate in 2025, to me, says something different than all prior years, because the variables changed for this class. I think it speaks to the diligence of our students, because these students started high school just as we returned from COVID. Am I remember September of 2021? Yes. In everything that came with that, and but it also speaks to our staff working diligently with our students to ensure that all of the graduation pathways were made available to them. There are some elements here that are consistent concerns. Our graduation rate for our Black African American students with an annual trend that has declined. Hispanic Latino students, while it's negative 0.7, that's sort of stable, but stable lower than is acceptable is something that we continue to work through. You can see our students eligible for multilingual services, 79.2 with a positive trend. And one of the things I did is I jumped in our data system, because the question is always, well, what about intersectionality? And we all know that intersectionality plays a big role. And when I added the layer of low-income households to, I just looked at our Black African American students and our Hispanic Latino students, the graduation rate dropped by another 10 points. And so it just consistently, bless you, looking at our students as a whole person. Every student comes with this set of assets, with their lived experiences, their backgrounds, and leaning into those assets to really help them succeed is really critical. And I know our schools are doing a tremendous amount of work. That's why I say that. You can see here, I show this, and I don't show the disaggregation by race, ethnicity on all of the slides, but this is just one that we've seen some peaks and valleys over the last few years for our Black African American students. For our Hispanic Latino students, it just feels really, really stable, and I know that's work that our schools are thinking about. This is the bright spot that I wanted to point out, because I pointed out at the beginning, when we looked at our graduation rate over 10, 12, 14 years, we started to see that incremental improvement. I kind of see a similar thing here. I mean, the line of best fit would be a positive trend over the last, 6 or 7 years. And you see the school improvement plans. I know our principal PLCs, many of them, their focus is on supporting our multilingual learners. And so to see just kind of consistent progress over time, that is exactly what we want to be seeing, is gaps closing and our schools working in that regard. And so while the annual trend, I think it was 0.2 or something like that, to me, this kind of longer view tells a little bit different picture. For each of these, I do show the longitudinal data for low-income students. And again, as I look at this, the long-term gap essentially stays the same over time. With one blip there in 2023, but that gap of about 15% remains true kind of year over year. And so, again, I share that, and I know the tremendous amount of work our schools are putting in to supporting students from all backgrounds and continuing to do that. I shared with you some of the reinvestment work that they did at the beginning of this year, and some of that is to support our learners that aren't graduating at the same rate as their peers, because they deserve that same level of success. As we look at students not dropping out, again, it was an intentional decision by the board to look at it in the inverse rather than just focusing on the percent of students dropping out. And so you can see, again, a relatively consistent overall trend with, and typically when you see graduation rates dip, you're also going to see a dip in the percent of students not dropping out. So it's not a surprise that you can see here for our Black African American students a reduction in the percent of students not dropping out. But you can also see here something that, again, follows the graduation rate, but is a positive trend for our multilingual students not dropping out, a 0.3% positive annual trend, which, again, 0.3 isn't the most significant thing there. It's the fact that it's not declining for a population that we know that's a significantly a difficult proposition. And so, again, that's our rate over time. This is our rate for multilingual learners. And then looking at our students from low-income households. Again, a relatively consistent gap over time. And then when we look at extended graduation rate, the extended graduation rate is really beneficial for us. Again, every student deserves the opportunity to graduate. Not all students are built alike, and some students may need some additional time. For many of our students on IEPs, they actually qualify for additional services beyond their fourth year in high school. And so we call those transitional services. And so we actually don't want them to graduate within 4 years. And so it's just kind of a unique thing about the on-time graduation rate. And so those students stay for 3 or 4 additional years, and so their graduation typically shows up in our 6 or 7 year extended graduation rate. You can see here, so 96.1% of, and if I could do this math really quickly, I would tell you, is that the class of 2022? Yes. Thank you. So 96% of the class of 2022 officially graduated. With our benchmark district, that ranks us third. And you can see there, there's some positive features within our extended graduation rate. Here's one place where you can see some changes in really the indicators there. Black African American has a positive trend. Our Hispanic Latino students, a negative trend there. Students eligible for ML services, a positive trend. So there's some additional things there. Now, our overall graduation rate, we moved from, with our benchmarking districts, 5th to 4th. With our extended graduation rate, we moved from 6th to 3rd. And so again, those are data points, but it also tells us that we're, kind of continuing to do the work alongside our peer districts. For students enrolling in post-secondary, in the report, there's some additional data at the end in the write-up related to this that I think is really important. And again, this part of the reason re-envisioning our vision is so important. Our vision highlights college, and I know what was meant by that. and I know the intent, but I also know that our students graduating from our high schools with the mindsets that we've identified, aligned with our student profile, with the ability to make decisions for their future, like that's really what we want for kids. And if that's college, great. Many of our students attend a 2 or 4 year institution within, or college or university within 2 years of graduation, over 80%. And that's a very high mark for a school district. And you can see there's some positive trends, there's some negative trends, students eligible for multilingual services. You can see a relatively significant decline in their annual trend. We do a student intent survey for our seniors, and this is in the report, and so I'm just kind of pulling it out here. About 91% of our students indicate that they're going to attend college post-high school, and that's about 79% indicate a 4-year school, 12% indicate a 2-year. And so there's about 11% difference between what our students are reporting their intent and their actual participation. And another thing that's listed in the report is our FAFSA completion. And one of the key indicators for college attendance is whether or not you complete the FAFSA. And and that is, the literature cites that pretty extensively. And so with only 59% of our students completing the FAFSA, it's no wonder there's a mismatch between intent and actual. And so it isn't about, again, it's not about saying go do this post high school, but it's about making sure our students have all of the opportunities available to them. And so it was just something that kind of jumped out to me as we think about our desire for our students to transition to whatever lies ahead. And so again, it's high leverage in that there's a relationship between FAFSA completion and enrollment in post-secondary. And if our students want to go to post-secondary, then ensuring more of our students are completing the FAFSA, I think, is a really key piece. Because if that's the barrier for students, then we want to support the reducing that barrier. Again, I pulled up low income and why students from low income households. It's really been a student group that we've talked extensively about this year in all of our progress monitoring and our monitoring. And again, you can see here there's variability. I'll say high consistency for our students not from low income households, and significant variability students from low income households. Dual credit is an area that we talked about. Right now, the indicator is percent of graduates completing essentially a dual credit course with a B or higher. Dual credit course is, we have 6 ways that students receive dual credit. Let's see if I can articulate them here on the dais. AP, college in the high school, Running Start, Tech Prep, which is CTE based, International Baccalaureate, and Cambridge. And so those are the ways that students receive dual credit. And you can see 97.7% of graduates received a B or higher in a dual credit course. Now we know that there are a number of classes, they're required classes that students track through. And so we've talked about, should we update this indicator? Should it be 2? Should we actually look at those 6 areas and think about those? And as I said to you previously, and regardless of whether we change the indicator or not, the class that the students took actually was articulated and accepted for college credit. And so we do have to recognize that as well. And you can see there of all of the areas, this is the place where we see the most positive trends for our students, where there's other trends that aren't as positive. Again, for our students from low-income households, we don't see many gaps closing in a lot of areas, but this is one of those places where we see a significant reduction in the gap. But it isn't just that they receive credit, because you can receive credit with a D. Students are achieving a B or higher in these courses and through their participation. So I think that is significant. And the last area is ninth grade credit accrual. And the indicator was written specifically for courses attempted, because if a student is only enrolled in 2 classes, then they would need to receive credit in 2 classes. If they were to not receive credit for 1 semester of one of those 2 classes, they would be listed as not earning credit for all courses attempted. So attempted truly means the number of classes that they've signed up for. As you know, in our 7-period model and our 6-period model, we don't often do reduced schedules for 9th grade. And so generally the majority of students you see here, we're taking a full 7-period course load. And so almost 88% of our students were receiving credit in all courses attempted. That ranks us second amongst our benchmarking districts. Again, I appreciate the conversations about benchmarking districts. What does that tell us? That tells us that there's not a lot of districts doing it better, and yet is 88% where we want to be? It just isn't. And but it tells us that we're doing some things well, because our benchmark districts are definitely districts that are regionally and similar in terms of profile. You can see here for some of our key groups: Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, students eligible for ML services, students from low-income households, and students receiving special education services. It is not a stretch to say that if you start from a deficit position after 9th grade, then tracking to on-time graduation is just really difficult. And so that's why this is such an important element for our schools as they pay attention to it, and for our students. And so part of the reinvestment we know went to courses where there were historically high failure rates, Algebra 1, English 9, and World History. And so those are areas where we had some of the highest failure rates. And again, the literature is clear about this being connected to on-time graduation. And again, seeing it here is one thing. When you visually see what the gap looks like for our students, it's significant, and we know once we start to reduce this gap, the opportunities and success for our students will significantly increase. So that is results 1. It's presented to the board as reasonable progress with noted exceptions. I'm happy to take questions.
Director Yoakum.
Thank you, and I appreciate you incorporating at least some of the things that were discussed in our R1 prep meeting. One of my thoughts, I don't know the answer to this question, but when we look at the students who are dropping out for whatever reasons, do we know if these students are students who began in that 9th grade day 1 kind of cohort, or are these students who transferred in?
I wouldn't be able to tell you who is what in the data, but if a student transfers in 10th grade and then, is designated, and then let's say they move and they're a transfer unconfirmed, they're our student. And so once they're in the cohort, they're ours. And so it can be a transfer in or a student that started in 9th grade.
But we don't know, we wouldn't be able, we don't have that.
I don't have it at my fingertips.
No,
I'm sure we have that data, yes.
Okay, yeah. So just for example, there were 45 Black African American students starting day one in our schools in 9th grade, and then 23 transferring in, and then a 10% dropping out. I'm just curious if are they more of the 10% transferring in, or I'm just curious if there's a correlation between that and some of the groups we're really looking deeper at.
I was also curious, thank you for calling it. It's taken me a couple times to listen to this, but we're looking at 9th graders who received credit. 9th grade on track is 9th graders who received credit for all courses attempted. So assuming that 100% of our 9th graders are taking sort of the full suite of available courses, which we do know from data, it's very close to that. This data is measuring 9th graders who completed 7 credits. And then next year at R1, we're going to be looking at 9th graders who completed 6 credits. I don't know if there's, I guess I don't really have a question, but it might be interesting to dig into that a little bit more, because I can imagine a world where, I forget what the number was. It was like low 90s% or, varied by student group and so on. But I could see a world where that percentage stays fairly flat or even ticks up, but we actually have more students who are sort of in maybe not in the greatest position to graduate, because there's a difference. A student previously who earned 6 credits would be counted in that sort of bucket of students who are not on track to graduate. But they kind of are, they were, because they still earned 6 credits towards 24 needed to graduate from high school and so on. Whereas a student now who is in that bucket might have only, even if they only received 5 credits, that is still challenging. So I don't know if there's if there's already sort of data available to understand sort of what's going on there. This might be something to look at. Just to explore more either during R1 monitoring or progress monitoring next year, but yeah, making sure that we're understanding as a board sort of what that metric actually means in terms of how it ties to the student experience and to actually being on track. Any other questions? I know we've looked at, we should have said too that we have looked at a lot of this data already over the course of this year with our new progress monitoring motion, which I think has been really, really helpful. But it does mean that we're kind of getting here like, yes, we've already talked through all this, and maybe have fewer questions because we've asked lots over the course of this year.
I have a question. I'm not going to be able to ask it articulately. I don't think so. Just everyone bear with me as I sort of fumble through this. But it's on the 7-year graduation rate, and in particular, we see a decline in special education students who are qualified for special education services. I think it was 2.1% was the trend over time in terms of on-time graduation for those students. And then we also know, I think that the majority of our students that do continue on, is that right? Well, first of all, I guess it's a multi-part question. I just want to I'm trying to unpack some of this data and understand in my mind. So I guess the first question I have is, I do have it right that the majority of our students who continue on with us as part of the extended and do end up achieving some extended graduation, those are special education students, is that?
About 50% of our students continuing qualify for special education services. Not all of them qualify for transition services.
Okay.
And so transition services, it's a very defined type of service, and there's some very key intents about why students qualify and what they're working towards. There are students whom qualify for special education who don't qualify for transition services, and they're continuing. And so there's credits they need to continue to work towards.
Okay. So when I guess I don't know how to ask this a different way. Like, when I see the data for students receiving special education services, a 1.8% decline trend, what should how should I interpret that? Like, and how should I understand that? And I guess, like, who are those students? I know, like, if we knew exactly why the trend was, then we probably wouldn't have that trend. It would be a different trend. So that's not a very fair question. But
no, but
how do I unpack that?
I have a hypothesis because I can't speak for certain.
Yeah.
Generally, our students that are receiving transition services, they're in a very, I'll just say, supported, consistent environment. Mm-hmm. There's a school location that they go to. So it's very, I'll say, predictable, mm-hmm. even though it's very different than just going to high school. It's community-based. They're learning to ride metro, to work. So it's very different, but the predictability of having a teacher, having paraeducators, the bus picks you up. So that's I would presume that 1.8% decline in the trend is students that don't qualify for transition services. And whether it's significant credit deficiency or a few credit, the stamina, the motivation, the structured supports probably are much different. And so again, that's a hypothesis. I can't say for certain, but that predictably feels somewhat in the ballpark.
Okay. Will everyone indulge me asking one more follow-up question? When the first time it was unpacked, the 7-year graduation sort of student demographics was unpacked for me as a board member a few years ago. I remember, sort of a takeaway I got from that was that I guess an assumption I made from that was that a lot of our the services we provide for after, I don't know how to phrase this in an articulate way, for students who are not graduating in 4 years and then stay with us for a period of time. The assumption I took from that was that the services we as a district provide are largely geared towards special education students. Is that a fair assumption?
I would say it's geared toward transition.
Toward transition services specifically. And so, so then that would then feed into your hypothesis of students who qualify for special education, students who receive special education services but do not qualify for transition services. Okay. I'll noodle on that some more. Thank you.
Is there a complete overlap? I understand we have Transition Academy and that is a form of transition services. Are there students receiving transition services who are not part of Transition Academy?
We do. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly which high schools have what. I believe Lake Washington High School keeps many of their students for their 18 to 22 services. But our transition program is quite large at this point, taking up multiple classrooms in multiple locations. And so I would say the majority of our students that qualify attend Transition Academy.
Sorry, one more. I'm not sorry. Why would a student qualify versus not qualify for trans? I feel like I should know the answer to this already, but I don't remember. Why would a student qualify or not qualify for transition services?
It's a very complex question of which it's based on evaluation, based on IEP team decision, based on kind of the students, any student who's on an IEP, there's a transition plan that you actually complete as an IEP team. And it's really connected to what does post-high school look like. And there's some adaptive measures that are considered. There's a focus on independence, focus on access to the community. And so if you have those, I'll just say, those skills, I mean, I don't know if any 17 or 18-year-old really has those skills when they're graduating high school, but we'll presume that they do at some level. But truly, like if there's deficits in those adaptive, community-based communication, access skills, then typically that's when the Transition Academy is beneficial. They're not teaching reading and writing at the Transition Academy. It truly is understanding the student's skill set so that they can be as independent as they can in a work setting, whether it's paid or unpaid. It's, am I able to move around my community as independently as possible? That's why teaching access to Metro, and I'm assuming now light rail, and that's a scary proposition for families the first time a child gets on a bus by themselves and arrives somewhere. It's understanding how to pay for things. But it isn't, 15 years ago, it was, how do I use maybe a debit card or cash? I'm sure now it's Apple Pay and, tap. So it's really working with the students so that they are, and then in terms of living, the goal of having students live in as independent a situation as they can achieve is really important in those, in all of the years, but really a focus in 18 to 22-year-old services. And there's many different living arrangements for our adults with significant and profound disabilities, and understanding the family's vision and goals for their child is part of the transition plan, and then those become the goals of the IEP and the work that the transition team does.
This last one. Has anything changed in the last 7 years that would affect whether students qualify? I feel like I'm giving you this as pop quiz here, but I guess it's your job, but not. Well, I don't know. I actually know that it's your job, but you're the person here right now to receive these questions.
I spent 5 years in our special services.
But has anything like okay?
Yeah.
So let's just keep building off let's say if your hypothesis is accurate, has anything changed in the last 7 years where fewer students or different students will qualify for transition services that would?
So more students are qualifying for transition services today than I would say ever before.
Okay.
Also, the age range has also changed. It used to be till 21, now it's still 22. Washington State's interpretation of IDEA was challenged in the courts.
Okay.
Washington lost.
Okay.
And so that was a recent change.
Yeah, that wouldn't show up in this data, right? Because it's only like 1 or 2 school years in, and we're looking, as we determined, at the class of 2022 here. But if I'm calculating right, for example, my student who's in the class of 2033 will turn 22 in 2037. So if she graduates, she could go through now. But if she stayed in transition services all the way, even if she did earn a diploma at the end, she wouldn't be counted in our extended graduation rate, because now she's 4 years out from high school graduation. I know this is not a today problem, but I'm curious whether, because I know that all of a lot of these metrics we have to collect. There's state laws around this, not just board policy, and is that on the horizon to update or to look at differently?
Yeah, I don't remember which, did we talk about that? Yeah, it was a question that we unpacked as well, because I think there's probably needed an 8-year graduation rate to be calculated. There's no federal requirement for an extended graduation rate calculation other than, I think, the 5th year. I think that's what Tim was saying. And so it'll be one of those things I follow up with our Olympia colleagues, just to understand if they're thinking about it as well, since they're the ones that are generating the 5, 6, and 7-year graduation rate.
Director Meekhoff.
You know, I think a lot, and I know I've talked a lot, just about how difficult it is to be a low-income student in an affluent community. And I think when you combine that in terms of intersectionality with English not being maybe your primary language, a thought that I had is just what can the district do, and I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but like to better support those learners. Like I was glancing at, you know, our website, and I'm wondering, like, who is that website for? Because when I'm navigating it, I'm wondering how a family might, and just like, yeah, how can we better hold their hand through this process, especially if we're talking about a student and a family transferring in. And then another question that I had is, do we know if new technology around interpreting could impact these numbers? I know with AI, and I know at a couple of our elementary site visits, I've seen some really cool devices being used, and I'm just curious if that could impact things.
It would be fascinating if our high school principals were here right now and we asked them the question, what do you do for students with, you know, with this profile? And my guess is the depth that we would hear is pretty significant. I share that because that actually may be of benefit to really hear some of the stories from our high schools, like what are they doing? Like that might be the entire extended study session in March. I mean, honestly, the depth of work that goes on at all levels, related to, you know, many of our, you know, our students furthest from educational justice, because like their worries are the same as ours. Like their work is consistent with what we're thinking about, and that's why the framework for allocating the reinvestment funds, like that wasn't Scott sitting in his office like coming up with something. That was really from our high school principals. Like they came up with a model that Scott made pretty on paper, but that was from them thinking about how do we want to think about this reinvestment, and they prioritized our students that we see the kind of consistent gaps with. So like as we think about engagement, that might be a unique perspective to bring into the room.
Any more questions? If not, hearing no more questions, thank you for the overview and the clarifications. Now it is the board's responsibility to consider the report and data as evidence of reasonable progress within this results area. I will now entertain a motion to approve the monitoring report as presented, showing reasonable progress with noted exceptions.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum to approve the monitoring report for, here we go. Yes, to approve the monitoring report results 1. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Director LaLiberty.
I'll be brief because I'm just repeating things that Dr. Holman and others have said already, but I just wanted to add my voice to this, that I agree that this is a policy that is in need of some work in maybe not in the short term, but in the medium term, to make it more consistent with what we know to be the shifting world we live in and the values that our community has. So this report I'm not being brief now. This report currently works for me. I think it will work for a few more years, but I do think this is something the board should be looking at doing some policy work on the next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I just wanted to toss in, really positive to see, really glad to see the recovery for the class of 2025. The class of 2024 was a dip last year, and those students, really were starting high school in the middle of COVID. We saw it in their 9th grade on-track data, and then went through to what we hoped would be a temporary dip. And it is really great to see the class of 2025, who yes, still did have a rough start. I remember that time when all of our comprehensive high schools were closed. That was their freshman year. And so for them to be able to recover and for our schools to support them through that is really good to see that dip for the class of 2024 really was temporary and coming back strong, especially with all the waivers and so on expiring. So it's a true graduation rate. And I think these concerns around our continuing students, I just continue to have curiosity around that and what we're doing to support those students, knowing that, yes, there's the chunk that we know are at Transition Academy, and that's sort of a structure, but for the other students, there's probably some really different experiences, and really just focusing in, because we're talking about 58 students from this class, and some others from 2024 and so on that are still working their way through, but it's a small number of students that where some very purposeful efforts and in some very targeted places could make a huge difference, because I would love to see us being number one against our benchmark districts for our extended graduation rate specifically. It feels very much in reach and would mean would make a real difference in the lives of students. So that's where I would want to see continued attention. Yes, phenomenal, all the work that I know that we're doing in those first 4 years, and for the students who need more time, making sure that it's not like, oh, well, now you kind of drop off the map. Yes, Director Liberty.
I forgot to say this. I think it's worth the fact that our in this year where we knew that the waivers were expiring, the fact that our and I know that the annual trend as measured over time is down, but the trend from last year is up. And in a year where I think, I'll just speak for myself, I was expecting to see our graduation rate decline from last year, and it did not. And that is, I know that's the result of an extraordinary amount of work and great work, and it's neat. When I don't totally understand the stock market, but when a company beats its earnings estimate, and so the share price, we beat our, at least in my mind, what the earnings estimate was going to be here, and it's really cool to get this report.
All right, now I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Holman and staff, and thank you for all the work that went into this and the difference that it makes in the lives of our students. Next on the agenda are the updates to interpretations and indicators for policies, multiple policies, related to enrollment. Dr. Holman.
I've never known how to eloquently walk through interpretation and indicators, I'll be honest with you. So I will just walk through them. I may start by reading them all, and I may conclude by saying it's there. But why are we looking at interpretation and indicators in 5 different policies. Well, the board wanted to make sure that, given the significant impact that student enrollment has on just overall district operations and the future, and that we codified really the board's values and expectations across policies. We debated, do we adopt an enrollment policy? And I'm really glad we didn't, because I think this probably is a better method, even though it's sort of strange to work in multiple policies at the same time. My presentation goes from 11 to 3, not 3 to 11, and I don't know why. And it probably shouldn't bug me, but it does. And so, but we're going to start with operational expectation 11, which is our policy related to the instructional program. And the policy statement that the board adopted states the superintendent will ensure the instructional program positions the district as an attractive and viable option for families. And so my interpretation, I interpret this to mean that the district provides an instructional program that meets the academic, developmental, and future readiness needs of students and is viewed by families as a high quality and compelling choice. I interpret instructional program to mean the curriculum, instructional practices, academic pathways, and co-curricular opportunities and student supports provided across all schools. I interpret attractive to mean that the district is perceived as a high quality educational perceived as high quality. I think there's something missing there. My typing failed me. To mean the district is perceived as high quality or has high quality educational experiences and provides opportunities for exceptional student growth and development. I interpret a viable option to mean that the district consistently demonstrates the ability to meet student needs and sustain programs that prepare students for future success. Indicators of compliance, and I know we don't typically number our indicators, but just so if there's questions about number 4, it's easier to orient to. Indicators, student retention rates are consistent over time. Kindergarten capture rate is consistent or improving. Capture rate is the enrollment. It's the percent of students enrolling in kindergarten based on 5 years prior birth data. Net choice transfer requests is consistent or improving. And so choice transfer requests are the inter-district transfers, student transferring from District A to District B. And the method there would be students transferring in minus students transferring out. Participation in specialized programs meets or exceeds prior year levels. Families indicate favorable perceptions of instructional quality and opportunities on district surveys. And the district proactively shares information with families and non-families about the quality and benefits of students attending school in Lake Washington School District. So just to be clear on number 6, I was asked a question, are we reporting about the students or are we reporting about the school? It's reporting about the benefits of attending school in Lake Washington School District, not about the students. And so obviously I'll modify that and the interpretation so that it's an actual sentence. Any questions about 11?
Director Richter.
Could you just clarify for me? It says, in the interpretation, it says co-curricular opportunities. What is the difference between that and extracurricular opportunities?
Yeah, co-curricular, I was thinking of programs that are both an activity and a course. Co-curricular, yes, yearbook, yes, thank you. extracurricular typically isn't connected to the instructional program, and that's why I specified co-curricular. Mm-hmm.
I guess then I just would love to come back to this with the rest of the board, that would then, this interpretation excludes extracurricular, sports, things outside of the school day. Is that correct? For me, like clubs?
Generally, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because as I think about the instructional program, it's something we have control over. In terms of like athletics, I don't want to be viewed as trying to recruit. John Applegate's busy enough as it is. He doesn't need me.
Well, I mean, also this lives in OE 11, which is the instructional program,
yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, Director Richter.
I warn you, I have 3 total more, so. The easy one would be, let's see. I'll do a small one first. In the indicators, the second to last one about families indicate favorable perceptions, is that I assume this is going to be Panorama. Is this an existing Panorama question? What's going on with this one? You know, I always have issues, I have qualms about Panorama sometimes, so that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, so Panorama is the platform we use for surveying. I don't believe we ask about perceptions of instructional quality, but there may be questions that are tangential to that right now.
I guess I was just wondering if that isn't as written. I looked at it and I said, I don't know how you would come to us and have data on that unless it's Panorama. And I had just kind of general questions, yeah. I guess, but we don't have to go into that more deeply right now. Should I keep going with my other 2? Okay, here's the big one I guess I have. If this entire OE 11.10 starts out with that language, which I know we talked about fairly extensively, attractive and viable, and those are 2 very different things, but I guess I was thinking about the attractive part of it, because a lot of what I see in the interpretation, the indicators, is sort of communicating our strengths. So what thoughts did you have? What were you kind of going through about the difference between promoting our strengths versus doing some targeted things, not necessarily a whole lot, but some number of them, to find and identify what would make parents go somewhere else and say, hey, come here instead. So actually make it more attractive versus just say, we are attractive. Does this make sense?
So I think that probably goes back to number 5, the indicator 5 is getting parent perceptions. So you're kind of inquiring about an exit survey for families that are leaving, that kind of thing?
I could see as an indicator for it, doing it. I actually had exit surveys written there. So I think that'd be about the only way you could really measure such a thing. This is purely based on what I admit is anecdotal. It's just if I am talking to friends, if I'm talking to parents, if there's a number of places that people can go if they don't find our program attractive and viable. Private school, homeschool, out of district, running start, there's some things. Most of the time it's either they don't find that their student is being supported in special ed, or their student isn't being supported in highly capable, or both, or it just isn't a fit for their student. And so I admit this probably comes down to highly capable students and whether they're feeling supported and want to stay in our district. But I could see there being other things on exit interviews that could be identified as well. Again, it's just, what does attractive mean, I guess, is really the question.
I mean, probably number 3 there also has some level of influence on kind of attempting to measure attractiveness. But I will ask a few questions about exit surveys. Because to be honest with you, I don't know if we do or if we don't do that.
Director Yocum.
Yeah, something you said triggered my thought about communication. And I know that there's an OE3 component, but I think it's a little bit, I don't know if it's the same, but is there an opportunity that, like, I don't know how we would have an indicator here, but of somehow evaluating our communication to the public, whether that's through social media or whether that's the website or some way to use the way we communicate about our programs. I don't know what that would look like, but I don't know, something Director Richter said just sparked that of, I don't know if.
So like re-envision indicator 6 there?
Yes, but I don't know if that's like, I guess I don't view that as it is communication, but Go ahead.
I'm envisioning, like, if we do adopt this as the indicator of compliance, number 6. I mean, I'm envisioning what the report would look like. Would be you'd be providing evidence of that communication and those stories, and that it'd be that qualitative thing that I think you're looking for. I don't know. That's when I look at that. That's what I see the evidence to be.
I had a very similar thought to you. And I was like, shouldn't this be in 3.8? And what swayed me was the fact that in the policy language, it says that ensure the instructional program positions the district. And I'm like, positions is a very communicative word to me. It's about communications. And so I finally went with, okay, this can stay. I'm not going to complain about this in 11.
No,
is that kind of what you're going
No,
with,
I think it belongs here.
Okay.
I guess maybe it is more what, I'm wondering what 6 looks like, I guess. That's more of, I don't know how to explain that. Yeah.
Director Meekhoff.
So I was having a similar thought, and I was connecting it to, rather than exit surveys, kind of the entrance, like how kids come in terms of communicating. I'm thinking about the constituent that we spoke with about feeling like she needed to make a decision about kindergarten many months before the district was taking steps, where like private schools were reaching out and sending mailings. And so I'm thinking about being proactive in that way rather than who's leaving our district. Like, how do we get number 2? And how does the district communicate with potentially incoming families, because there are so many options here. Where I grew up, there was one school and that's where you went, and so the district did not have to do very much.
Director Yocum.
I was going to say, I think that's a really specific example, and I think that's more what I was looking at. And maybe that's what you're thinking in 6, but I think I was just trying to think of what does that look like, and I like that as an example. But
for me, 6 really looks like, what is the good news story we're consistently sharing with the community? That's what 6 is to me.
And I guess I would ask then, what does good news mean? Because sometimes, you know, as a parent who has a child receiving special education services, sometimes I look at a lot of the good communication, and it's something that it would never be good news about something that he's involved in, right? So I think it's maybe defining what does that good news look like, broadening it as I'm asking for something more narrow.
Another thing that I was thinking about as I was doing interpretation and indicators for all of these, just this body, essentially, even though they're separate policies, we've just created another monitoring report. Even though it spans 5 policies, and so I was also trying to be as succinct as I could with the indicators, so to not create a monster, if you will. And so if there's indicators here that don't resonate, I would rather know that now, rewrite, redo, so that we're reporting exactly what we think helps answer the question about the policy. And I know that's not our typical process, but I also, we're creating new processes here.
I like these. I think I was more trying to give input of like, what does the good news look like? Like, and I think more of those questions will come once these are monitored the first time, right? Yeah. But there's going to be a little proactive in my communication here.
Yes.
I am also comfortable with these indicators.
Director Richter.
Kindergarten was mentioned, and it made me go, okay, I do have one more question. I am, in fact, comfortable with the indicators. On the other hand, I have been looking at all of these, what you just said. Do we really need? The first 2 indicators with the student retention rates are consistent over time. And the second one, kindergarten capture rates are consistent or improving over time, essentially. I guess my question was, do you want to make them both? The first one, consistent or improving, just so they're the same kind of thing you're measuring. But I guess that's like a little one-off thing. But I'm curious why kindergarten was chosen as opposed to first grade, because we always have interesting data on kindergarten and first, because I assume of all our Montessori preschools around here. So just thoughts on that.
Yeah, so 2 things. One, our student retention rate that goes through all of our grade levels, and many of our grade levels are at 100%. That felt, to say 101% feels, I don't know if we could always control that. I mean, we can't control 100% either, but like there's things we can do with that 100%. So that's why I stated consistent. Kindergarten capture rate, while our kindergarten data is different than all other grade levels, it also, we have data on what happens with kindergarten to first grade, and so the kindergarten capture rate it's very impactful for the rest of the system. So it's a data point that we monitor closely and have for many, many years. So,
just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One thought I had too was we talked before during R1 monitoring about the different types of dual credit programs, and we've seen that data during progress monitoring. You mentioned we might need to look at that indicator in R1, and it might also be interesting to pull it in here, but in a different way. In R1, we're using it as a measure of, I'll say kind of post-secondary readiness, or the assumption being, if we can get most of our students graduating with a college credit that demonstrates readiness for post-secondary work. Here it would be looking at the different programs that they're accessing, because there's very interesting variations across programs, across student groups, and not sort of a consistent like, here's the story, but just real differences. And thinking about especially that indicator number 4, whether that might be, we could also look at that indicator in R1, but maybe we leave R1 as it is and just pull in some of that data and have that conversation here. Anything else on 1110 for now?
Okay, 8:15. Superintendent will provide the board with regular updates on enrollment trends, demographic projections, and implications. I interpret this to mean that the superintendent provides the board with timely, accurate, and relevant information regarding enrollment patterns and projected changes, along with analysis of the implications for the district. I interpret regular updates to mean in alignment with the board's annual work plan or when a significant variance from prior updates is identified. I interpret enrollment trends to mean the historical and current data on student enrollment by grade, school program, and student group. I interpret demographic projections to mean short and long-term forecasts based on birth rates, housing development, and known migration patterns. I interpret implications to mean the impact of enrollment on staffing, facilities, budgeting, and program planning. Indicators, the board receives at least one annual comprehensive enrollment and projection report. Enrollment data is disaggregated by grade level and school. Enrollment projections include both short and long-term forecasts. Analysis of impacts on staffing, facilities, budget, and programs is provided through enrollment and budget presentations.
Director Richter?
My understanding of this one, from what I remember, is that we're kind of already doing this. I mean, we are already doing this. And so that's how I was looking at it as I went through. So I just have one question about and overall I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. I have one question about the interpretation, the definition of enrollment trends. Given like a bit on the facilities advisory committee and all these, we get these presentations from Flo. I'm trying to remember if I'd seen program and student group in that data before. Is that new? Or would that be new? And if so, do we want to add that and add more burden?
Let me look into that because that's I was attempting to document what is, because that was part of this work, was kind of codifying some good current practices.
And I may just have spaced out and been so focused on different data that I missed it. So I just wanted to ask the question.
Yep, thank you.
And specifically, given public comment tonight, I don't feel like specifically full-time Quest and middle school Quest that we've seen enrollment trends on that. We sometimes hear things where there's sometimes comments made, like I'm thinking of sort of shifts in sort of growth in different areas of the district and so on. But I don't feel like we've seen that in those reports alongside. And, again, as we were reminded tonight, that's very impactful to families' understandings. The changes turn into impacts to families and to students.
I happen to have the enrollment projections open as we're doing this. There are some programmatic elements that are tracked currently, like WANIC, and I'm one other that I can't remember.
Is it Running Start?
Running Start, that's what I was going for. Thank you.
But that wouldn't be all programs, and this just says by program and student group. So I don't know that we want to start tracking, our list of white, Asian, this, that. It seems like too much.
Okay.
one other call out here of sort of things that are mentioned, but that I don't think we're currently tracking or not tracking rigorously, is the known migration patterns. So we definitely look at birth rates, we look at housing developments, but migration, it's implicit in some of what we look at. So for example, birth decay is not literally like, here's this cohort of whatever, 3,000 students who are born, and we're going to track those 3,000 and, X percentage show up in K. It actually, because presumably some of those students moved out, other students moved in, and so on, and then you get this number. So it's implicit in some of these ways, but yeah, I don't know really if we can get to that level of detail. I was playing around with census data. You can do it at the county level, and there's some very interesting migration trends there. But looking at it for LWC specifically, like I don't even know if that's possible. But I've always had sort of a sense that it does impact enrollment. Yeah, so I don't know if that was intentional to include that, if there is more that we can be doing there, or if, just what to make of that. And it came up, there's one of the other sub-policies where it's mentioned as well that we'll get to later.
So it's almost an aspirational interpretation, because you can see the indicators don't really speak to migration, because I don't have a great data source yet for it. But
You've asked Flo. They do not either.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember when you asked Flo. But I think we just inherently know that, particularly migration connected to, groups kind of coming from something, and kind of this is, new location, job types, so there's different types of migration, like our Brazilian population that's in the Juanita learning community, it's, this robust community that, 6 years ago, we wouldn't say we had a large Brazilian population here. That's a type of migration. We know with just the employers here, it's an international employment, and when immigration is, I'll say, stalled, stopped, changed, that affects who's coming here. So,
I mean, when I saw that, I guess it didn't clock for me, because I know that the flow report certainly compares how many births there were to what enters our district, how many students enter our district. That can be lower, can be higher. And so we always talk about it in terms of how many students are moving out of our district, how many have we had coming in. And so I was kind of thinking it was rolled up in that. You could probably make an argument for that. If you wanted to say it's the same as before, it would be interesting to know more. But yeah, Flo has never coughed up the data.
Okay, 6.8, superintendent will manage enrollment-related decisions and processes in a manner that supports long-term financial stability and equitable use of resources. I interpret this to mean that enrollment-related decisions are made in a manner that aligns resources to student enrollment, maintaining fiscal health, and ensuring fair access to resources, time, people, money. I interpret enrollment-related decisions and processes to include boundary adjustments, school openings or closures, staffing allocations, program placement, and facility utilization. I interpret long-term financial stability to mean the district maintains a budget that limits financial risk, aligns revenue expenditures annually, aligns revenue expenditures in the required 3-year projected budget, specifies any time budget reserves will be used to balance the annual budget, and supports maintaining board-adopted reserve levels. I interpret equitable use of resources to mean that resources are allocated based on student need to ensure fair access to learning opportunities. Again, that third paragraph, I believe we do all of those things already. Well, I know we do all of those things already, and something like specifying anytime budget reserves will be used to balance the annual budget. We show that, but I'm not sure we call it out to the degree that I think we need to, connected to enrollment. Indicators of compliance: staffing allocations are aligned to enrollment. Facility utilization rates fall within established capacity targets. Multi-year financial plans demonstrate alignment between enrollment and expenditures. The district maintains board-adopted budget reserves. Resource allocation models include adjustments based on student need where possible. In the 6 enrollment-related decisions include documented considerations of equity impacts.
Director Richter?
I feel like I keep starting something tonight. Again, going with, you said you felt like this is consistently what we're already doing, which answers a few questions, so I don't even have to ask those. Thank you. In the interpretation, enrollment-related decisions and processes. I was looking at this, it's a list, I'm going boundary adjustments, okay, school openings and closures, staff allocations, and then my brain starts going, well, what else is not in this list? What about, transfers in and out of the district? What about purchasing or selling property? What about, mixed grade classrooms, like 4 or 5? And so I guess I'm wondering if you want to make that specific list, or if it should be broader, or if you're very happy with it just the way it is.
I stayed kind of broad, and I would say these areas all are substantial in nature, and they all could, in their own way, have a very, I'll say, dire impact on kind of the financial health of the organization. That's why I stayed at this level. Yes, there are so many there's so many things under each of those that could be articulated. So that's why I stayed at that level.
Keep going.
Okay, I'll keep going. Then going forward to the indicators. I guess I have a question about the first one, because if this is, I guess I was looking at the first one, like, okay, what is an indicator of compliance of this? And I suddenly had, visions of lots of reports and a lot of information, like how would you prove to us that it was aligned with enrollment? It's either a fairly long presentation, or it's just saying, promise it's aligned with enrollment.
Yeah.
And so I was like, do we need that first one, I guess?
So for me, I believe yes, and it's something that we share with the board through the budget process. And so maybe it's calling it out more specifically and talking about how is it aligned with enrollment. But with 85% of our budget being staff, if we're off by 1% in our staffing, that's a significant cost implication. And so demonstrating how we're doing that in various ways, and it's easy to demonstrate that where a school is declining in enrollment and you're adjusting the staffing based on your ratios for classroom teachers. We have a administrative staffing model. We can show how that is changing over time. We don't have a central office staffing model, yet it is important for me to demonstrate to the board that in all areas, if we're contracting by another 4,500 students, that you see a very thoughtful contraction of the district in all areas, not just classroom teachers. Like that's the easiest to demonstrate because, you know, everybody kind of knows the ratios and what it is, and it's disappointing, you know, as you're contracting, but like there's a logic to it. Central office staffing, there's no logic model to like X number of positions based on this number of students. It just doesn't work that way. And so different decisions have to be made along the way, but they have to be made. So.
Okay, because when I had originally seen it, I'd also thought, is this just sort of a subset of the third indicator? But you sound like you have some goals in mind for this first one, so, you know, run with it.
Well, and just how important it is. Like to me, of everything in this presentation, that first indicator can have the most immediate impacts to our budget going askew.
I'm thinking too about information that's been provided in the past, like around sort of like min, max, and average class sizes for a given grade level. It's very succinct in terms of it doesn't take. It's not like, you know, it's not like a budget presentation like that, that level of detail, but it's very helpful to understand, and that would demonstrate this alignment to enrollment, because if you're not adjusting your staffing allocations based on enrollment, if we're in declining enrollment, we would see that average class size just continuing to go down, down, down. Right. You know, like if you're just looking at fifth grade, like it would start at 28 or whatever and work its way down. So yeah, I think that's helpful data that we've seen in the past. I'm curious on number 5. And I know it says EG, FRL, multilingual special education. So there could be additional student groups. Thinking about highly capable students as something that would be called out, because we do know that that there are significant variations in percentages, not just because obviously a school that hosts full-time Quest is generally going to have more highly capable students than one that does not, but just overall, and thinking of that as a student need as well. So was there a specific reason for not calling that out, or is it kind of part of the EG? Or
I would say the EG was not intended to be comprehensive first, and so no, there wasn't any student group left out on purpose, and so. Okay, slowly walking our way down the stairs. Okay, 5.5, the superintendent will develop a budget that is informed by demographic data and enrollment projections. So I interpret this to mean the district will use demographic data and enrollment projections to inform planning, decision-making, and resource allocation. I interpret demographic data to mean student population characteristics and community factors such as housing, birth rates, and migration when available. I interpret enrollment projections to mean data-informed forecasts of student enrollment over time. 3 indicators of compliance. Enrollment projections are updated annually. The budget is reflective of enrollment projections, and projection accuracy is reviewed annually. And OE5 is financial planning, not financial management. So I was trying to also, like, this isn't an enrollment policy. These are policies related to enrollment that are fitting within other subset policies. So
Director Richter?
I'd say this sounds like exactly what we're doing already, and I have no questions.
And last but not least, 3.8 states the superintendent will ensure that enrollment processes, including registration, school assignment, and program choice, are clear, welcoming, and barrier-free. That's a great bar to strive for. I appreciate that. Not a single barrier. I interpret this to mean that all families are able to access and navigate enrollment processes in a manner that is understandable, supportive, and free from unnecessary barriers. I interpret enrollment processes to include student registration, school assignment, and access to program choice options. I interpret clear to mean that requirements, timelines, and processes are communicated in a straightforward and consistent manner. I interpret welcoming to mean that families experience respectful, responsive, and supportive interactions. I interpret barrier-free to mean that obstacles related to language, technology, disability, or socioeconomic status are minimized, accommodated, or removed.
Director Richter? Sorry.
Okay, I have one that's going to go from the text of it to the interpretation to the indicators, just to get all three.
Yeah.
But it's honestly based on my own experience with my own kids, where it was an accidental web search, not even on LWSD's website, that made me realize Wannick summer classes were available a couple of years ago. And so what's here is talking about essentially if to me, how I'm interpreting this, is if a family, say, knows they need to register for kindergarten, or knows they want to sign up for Wannick, or knows that they want to transfer in, that they can go through the process easily, and they can get translation and all these things. But I guess I'm asking, what about something even more fundamental? You know, you go to a website and it's, hey, new here, you know, what do you need to do? Something that actually helps people know what is available. And this may be way out of scope of what you want to think about, but I'm just putting it out there to talk about. And this kind of tied to enrollment processes, because enrollment processes, the definition talks about program choice options, which made me, again, start enumerating them in my head. Is it full-time Quest? Is it Wannick? Is it, you know, choice schools? Is it a lot of things there, which then went down to the indicators of compliance, because that was basically the enrollment information, which I'm kind of assuming is like the information on the stuff that's in the enrollment processes, is available, current, and accessible in multiple languages. But I'm like, okay, but is it also easy to get to, I guess. Anyway, I'm just thinking of that jump from it's available, or are we hand-holding people enough that they know it exists?
Do you think the policy statement speaks to what you're talking about?
I guess it's the welcoming to me. What's down there says respectful, responsive, supportive. And to me, welcoming isn't just that is polite. Welcoming is like, yeah, come here, come on in, you're with us now. It's a little bit step beyond that.
Director Meekhoff.
Something that I was thinking about is our experience at Emerson K-12. We were actually told about the Wannick Summer Program. And so, you know, I think it is so dependent from school to school. Like, I like this language, but making sure that there's a consistent experience across schools in terms of what resources are shared and what welcoming means. Does that make sense?
Can I jump in? Thank you, Director, because I think it's insightful. Like, as I sort of think about it, it's like the difference between my brain is mush right now. It's a difference between inviting someone in, right?
Yeah.
Right, versus if they happen to stumble upon your door, not making it difficult for them. And I think that's really, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. Like, I think we do want to just be more than the second. I think we do want to actively, like as a district, to be welcome is inviting, going out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something I'm proselytizing now, but I do think there is an element of that. I don't know how to work. I don't know. I can't help you with the words. But I agree. Like, but with the value and the sentiment, I do think like when I think about like what I was thinking about when with welcoming, like I do think it is more than just there's an active part of that verb, I think.
Director Yoakum.
I'm just going to agree.
I'm wondering if there's in the interpretation, right? If like when looking at the enrollment process, if there's a piece that might be missing, like that, there's an initial piece of the enrollment. What you're both speaking to, that's kind of how I guess I'm interpreting what the two of you are saying. Like there's before registration, before assignment, like there's this piece of actively like. Is there another piece that's missing from there? And something along what you said, Director Meekoff, is I also wonder if there's a way to put in, and now I'm going up to like the actual policy language, if there's like consistent, clear, welcoming, consistent, barrier-free. I don't know if that's an appropriate place, but that just made me think of that.
Can I also say, I think we do that currently now. Like if we're defining out welcoming as more of a reaching out, like I know that we have events for kindergarten registration. We send out postcards, mailers. There is an element like that is something we are doing. And I am also comfortable with what we have in place now. Like I agree with like the value, and I think it's worthy of some thought, some consideration, and maybe a tweak. But I'm okay with going forward with what we have.
I admit, I just realized that I had been making a little logical fallacy where when I was thinking of this, I was thinking almost entirely of our website exclusively. And so I don't know if we want to talk more about, like, is this things like sending out pamphlets and experiences at schools? And I assume it is. I don't know, I guess I just want to call that out. It's more than just one thing.
I just want to, so the board is defining welcoming differently than I did, like drastically different than I did.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because the board is defining welcoming as like an active outreach.
I think what you're here. I think that's fair. I think to include that, I suppose.
Right.
Or that would be an element of it, a way to be welcoming.
And so, part of the intent of doing this was to codify what the board wanted, like future versions of us to know.
Yeah.
And if I'm a reasonable person and I didn't even come close to interpreting the board's language as active outreach for welcoming, then I wonder if you want to adjust the policy as well to make sure you're saying what you specifically want to say so that it's So the interpretation flows better. It isn't, because I'm still not sure I agree with your definition of welcoming.
I think I disagree with you, honestly, because you can be friendly or inviting or welcoming to someone. Like if you meet someone on the street, you can say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Versus, "Hi, nice weather we're having, isn't it? I'm going over here," right? The Seattle freeze is what I'm thinking about, quite frankly. Like you can be friendly and inviting to the other side of of an interaction, wanting to establish a deeper relationship with you, without saying, "Hey, stranger I just met, do you want to come over to my house? We can have coffee, we can have a drink." You know, I feel like there's a middle ground to be, I guess, inviting. I did not mean to imply active outreach, which is where I think you're going.
Director Yoakum.
I think where I maybe more disagree is with the interpretation of enrollment process, where I don't know if it's being proactive, and I don't know if that's what we're getting at, is wanting more of a proactive component to the enrollment process. Not that there's a interpretation where welcoming's not accurate, but I guess that's how I'm interpreting what I'm hearing, and maybe more my thoughts.
And I would go back to, does the policy say that? Because the policy, I think enrollment process is it's defining something as opposed to defining an action.
I think I heard us dancing around this too a little bit with 1110 to start with, of what is, and this has come up throughout our conversations around enrollment policy, and I don't know that we landed on some language of, yes, how much of it is, yes, that it should be barrier free, that a family who is interested has that interest in enrolling in Lake Washington School District and sort of thinks that it's a high quality educational experience, and all of these words that we've talked about through here. Do we make it reasonably easy for them to enroll, or are we actually looking to attract families actively, not just by having a great educational program, which I think we all just agree is what we're here to do, but actually saying, somehow doing proactive reach out to potentially bring in families that would not have otherwise chosen LWSD, and then having a barrier-free process after that, obviously. And I maybe that's what we're grappling with here, is that my memory, and this has been somewhat extended, is that we intentionally shied away from going that far, and so that's why the language is what it is. Are we wanting to reopen that conversation? Because yes, there might be opinions on that, or I know I have some somewhat garbled thoughts, but I think that's what we're struggling with here, is that these interpretations and indicators are what we asked for, and we may be going back on that. Now I've got lots of hands. Let me start with Director Richter.
I have to. I agree with what you said, and I think we had that conversation about all our public school districts are in this together, so we're not trying to fight for resources. We're all trying to elevate public school wherever it is, and so I think kind of where we were going. So I agree with that. I guess I'm just trying to clarify. Again, I said that I suddenly realized I'd been thinking of the website rather exclusively, and it's just, I think I'm going to something that's not high and lofty, and is just going to like basic user interfaces and design, because, you know, looking at college websites or school websites, there are some that are very much not user-friendly, and if you don't know what you need, you don't know you need it. And so just that portal, just a way to get people in so that they know what they need from nothing, I guess, is kind of what I'm going for, which would be especially helpful for families who are further from educational justice.
Director Liberty?
Okay. Thank you, Director Guthrie, for what you just said, and thank you, Dr. Holman, for what you said too. I've done a complete 180 from where I was 10 minutes ago. I think you actually have it right here now. And I just thank you for reminding me of this conversation. And then I actually went back and I was looking at the other policies that we were talking about today and thinking about this as a whole and how we were thinking about it. Yes, now that I'm remembering, when we talked about this particular policy that we're looking at 3.8, it was about the process, and that when people do come to us, that they are able to access a barrier, as close to a barrier-free environment as possible, then it is welcoming. It wasn't about the proactive, going out leafleting, and I think that's important, because what we're talking about reading this in conjunction with 11.10, where we're talking about ensuring the instructional program is positioned as an attractive and viable option. That does, to me, capture that interest. And we're measuring that in the right way too, in terms of our families enrolling. And it could be that the superintendent positions the district as an attractable and viable option by, through strictly marketing. It could be by having programs. But here's the thing. To me, that's the right level of for the board to be at. That is the value that we have here. And then how the district goes about doing that, I think there needs to be some discretion for the superintendent. I think actually delivering a attractable and viable, or delivering an academic program that is the best way to do it, as opposed to just selling it. But there's that. So all that to say, thank you for reminding me. Thank you for pushing back. I agree that is not what you did. You interpreted the policy as I thought about it at the time, not how I forgot about it today for a brief period of time.
And thank you for the feedback on welcoming, because I am going to go back and think about it. And I have a personal example of welcoming. My son went to an orthopedic doctor, and Lindsay, I think I mentioned this to you, and it was the most fascinating experience, because this doctor listened, he asked questions, and then it was all of a sudden he was like, I hear you saying all of these things. These appear to be your goals, so here's the plan. And so it was so responsive to his needs. And so it was the most welcoming doctor experience I have ever had. So anyways, so I jotted down a note to rethink welcoming and add some language.
Director Yoakum?
Thank you again for reminding me as well. I am in the same position as Director Liberty, and I think I'm going back to that last indicator in 11.10 around that proactively looking at that component is probably more what I'm stuck on with this piece. So, yeah. Thank you.
Director Meekhoff?
I also agree. And I wasn't ever really on the other side to begin with, but I think I like this language, because I think that this does open the door, depending on the climate, for the district to be proactive. What I was thinking about is I'm kind of stuck on the consistent. And so just, starting with the website, right? Easy to navigate. Then you find out what the homeschool is and you go in and so it's every step that a family takes, that it's, barrier-free, welcoming, and clear is what is important to me.
Yeah.
I also want to call out that I may have been thinking about this wrong. When I was reading this in preparation, I was thinking enrollment processes. I was thinking of this as being very specific to the initial enrollment. So I'm coming in with a kindergartner, or I just moved here, or my child, I want to transition them out of private school or what have you. I think actually what we're talking about is that there are enrollment processes that happen even for students who are currently enrolled in our district. And so just calling that out, because I think program choice I was thinking of as being too narrow. So I just to call out some things, like I think that this would involve highly capable. I think that this would involve choice schools. I think this would involve WANIC. I think this would involve Running Start. Anytime that students are entering into some sort of sub-enrollment process, I guess, when they're already enrolled in our district, but there's something else that they need to enroll in. Full year versus summer WANIC, all of it. So I don't know that any language updates are needed. I just wanted to throw that out there in case everybody else was actually narrowly thinking of it as the initial enrollment. But that I think the language is broad enough to encompass that, and I think it's just important to have that understanding.
I would also say the thought and attention that schools give to a boundary change, like when students are transitioning from school A to school B, just the family nights, the visits, the come see our school, getting to know the students, like those are all, I think evidence of school assignment and doing that well.
All right. Director Richter?
I'm very sorry. I have a different question about all this. Yeah. The second indicator, I'm not sure what that means or how you'd measure it.
Someone who almost didn't complete it within the established timeline.
Like maybe just remove it entirely and I'd be fine.
I don't.
Yeah, let me think through that one. I mean, I could come up with some things, but I'm not sure that that's exactly what we're wanting to measure. I mean, it essentially means it's available in a timely manner. The choice school application is, available when we say it's going to be. So I think so let me think through that one again before next reading.
All right. I think we're done for now. And we're not taking action on this tonight. This will come back for a second reading. Maybe we can remember this time what we did tonight. If not, I will remind us again. I'm going to propose that we take, how about an 11-minute recess to 9:50? Is the superintendent report. Dr. Holman.
So tonight I'm sharing, you may have seen this already, but I thought just publicly recognizing the work that our nutrition services team was recognized from OSPI. As we think about inclusive schools and inclusive experiences, there isn't anything we do that we can't continue to think about how do we make it more inclusive. And so this award comes from OSPI. It's called Rooted in Excellence. Rooted, I think, roots, vegetable, like food, like I believe that's where it came from. And it's called Culturally Inclusive Meals. That's what the award is referenced. And I'll just read what they wrote. It says, Lake Washington School District receives recognition for excellence in culturally inclusive meals. Nutrition services staff intentionally redesigned food service operations to better reflect student diversity. Approximately 40% of students of enrolled students identify as being, I'll try and read it accurately. Approximately 40% of enrolled students identify as being of Southeast Asian descent, and the team added culturally inclusive recipes such as Baha'i me to school menus. Lake Washington also offers vegetarian options daily and removed pork products from elementary and middle school menus to ensure broader accessibility. During the 25-26 school year, the district introduced Ramadan meal kits for students using the USDA waiver, further supporting cultural and religious inclusion. And so specifically, the Ramadan menu allowed students to pick up food resources because a number of our older students participate in fasting during Ramadan. And so for those students, that school is definitely a source of nutrition and food resources. Just the thought and care to think through the mechanics to even be allowed to do that is really, really appreciated. And I know those small acts definitely mean a lot to our students, and it's just one of the ways that we're thinking about how do we create inclusive schools for our students. Thanks.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is school visits and community affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from school visits or from organizations or groups they engage with on behalf of LWSD. Are there any updates from the board? Director Yocum.
So 2 years ago, I was assigned as the board liaison to the Eastside Human Services Forum, and I haven't shared many updates because this organization has been undergoing significant changes, and I just wanted to wait until all of those were finalized. So over this past year, the Eastside Human Services Forum and the Alliance of Eastside Agencies made the decision to sunset their organizations and come together to form a new regional effort advocating for human services in East King County. And I served on the small steering committee that helped create this new initiative, which is called the East King County Human Services Collaborative, or the Collaborative for short. And this is being run by the Together Center. So on April 24th, nearly 100 people gathered at the Together Center for the Collaborative's inaugural convening. Leaders and community members from across East King County shared feedback on ideas that will shape the work moving forward. It was actually great to see members of our student and family engagement team participating as well during that event. Looking forward to continuing to support this new effort to bring human service organizations together to learn from one another and strengthen services across our region and for students and families in our district.
Director Richter.
I just wanted to give an update on two extremely similar committees that I am the liaison for, which is facilities and budget. I was able to attend Barbara Posthumous's Facility Advisory Committee on April 23rd, and essentially that and also the budget. I also attended some of the Budget Advisory Committee on, what date was that? It was last week. God. 4:30, April 30th. And in both cases, it was a lot of bringing to the advisory committee what we had talked about in our 3-day extended board study session and retreat. And so that was interesting, just to listen to the committee members, look at the projections, think about the potential outcomes of what we're seeing with enrollment. And I don't want to spoil anything for, I'm sure Barbara Posthumus will come back to us with some sort of information on what is talked about. I will say that I did hear a lot of themes from the Facility Advisory Committee in particular about about the fact that it looks like it wasn't. Are we talking about increasing enrollment and declining enrollment, or are we talking about a bubble? What is the framing of everything that we are considering? Honestly, I think it aligned fairly well with what this board talked about during that extended study session, and just where are the opportunities in the work we're going to do moving forward, and how to be excited for that. So it was a good discussion.
So back sometime in April, I forgot to write down the date, the board did a school visit to Audubon Elementary. We got to see kindergarten and first grade classrooms engaged in small group work around literacy. One of the highlights for me was having a kindergartner explain to me the difference between open and closed syllables so that I would actually understand it, which was great. A very different reading instruction from what I experienced growing up, so I'm learning a lot. We also went to a fifth grade classroom that was engaged in some writing and really some critical thinking and discussion around the use of AI and sharing their opinions around that. And then a fourth grade classroom that was engaged in opinion writing, and these kids were so engaged in opinion writing that they stayed to talk about their opinion writing when their teacher was literally shooing them out the door like it is recess time. But these kids were really excited about the opinions, had many opinions to share. And it was just great to see that engagement and to interact with those phenomenal students. So thank you to all the staff at Audubon that allowed us to awkwardly hang out in their classrooms. Oh, sorry, one more thing I had. About that visit was also the physical environment is something that I look at a lot in school visits, because a lot of times we're looking at spreadsheets and numbers and this many classrooms and that many classrooms or what have you, and it's always fun to actually see what that environment is like. Audubon, I believe, was the last school that was remodeled instead of rebuilt when it was time for it to be refreshed. And you could tell from that built environment that it was just very unique and different from a lot of our schools, even schools that were rebuilt just a few years later. And the staff there makes very interesting use of all the different spaces they have. And I would say that I will just remember that when we have the rebuild versus remodel. Those conversations or those decisions are something that does need to be approved by the board, and I now have sort of a visual of what that difference looks like. We look at it purely on financial grounds, but also the actual built environment. Yes, and also after we spent many hours at the extended study session in March talking about portables age, that is something that I'm now very much looking for at all the schools that we visit, and sort of understanding where their portables fit in, and again, the very different experiences between schools. So again, thank you to the staff there for allowing us to hang out and see things. I also had the opportunity last Wednesday night to go to WASDA's DA2, the Director Area meeting, which DA2 I think is roughly King County. I forget. I don't think it extends too much further south. But there were a number of other school board directors there from Bellevue, Issaquah. It was hosted by Tahoma School District, so 4 of their board directors were there. Snoqualmie Valley, Riverview, a lot of our neighboring districts. As always, a lovely time. The focus was really on strategic advocacy, so talking through how we as school districts can engage with legislators and other parties. I had one more thing I was going to share, but now I've forgotten. I will go with thank you to Tahoma for hosting us. As always, great to just interact. I remember now. There were also, in addition to other school board directors, WASDA staff, Melissa Beard, who's the current president of WASDA, Tricia Luba, who's the executive director, and also Senator Claire Wilson was there, which was really cool. She is a former school board director and just a really great person. And so having some of her insights around strategic advocacy and just got to talk to her a little bit afterwards as well was a really neat experience. So thank you to her for taking the time to hang out with us school board directors. All right, committee updates. Director Yoakum.
Yeah, so I am part of the Inclusion Advisory Committee, and this committee met on April 23rd to continue reviewing the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook through an inclusion-centered lens, focusing on whether the language in this handbook upholds dignity, presumes competence, and avoids unnecessary barriers for students with disabilities specifically. The committee members split into 4 groups to dive deeper into specific aspects of this handbook. One group looked at the discipline section, and this group recommended shifting to firmer equity-aligned language such as schools will instead of schools are encouraged to. This group also highlighted the importance of naming partnership with families as a core component of any discipline approach. And there was another group that examined the transportation section of the handbook, and they found that some of the procedures, especially for students receiving IEPs, that these procedures need clearer rights-based language and should reflect the same accommodations that students receive in classrooms. And then 2 groups actually worked on a potential new section for this Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, specifically for students receiving special education services. Some recommendations included opening this new section with a clear statement of universal and additional protected rights. And additional suggestions included adding straightforward explanations of key processes such as like 504's IEP, Child Find, along with how families can request meetings, seek services, and know who to contact. So this, I believe this was the last meeting of the year, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with this information and where this goes next year. I appreciate really that this committee is aiming to ensure that the handbook that we have reflects inclusion, transparency, and respect so students and families see themselves as valued partners with clearly defined rights, not just responsibilities.
And on April 23rd, Director Meekhoff and I attended the most recent Community Connectors meeting. With this group, they really brought back a sort of a community engagement toolkit that group had developed mostly last school year. Which has questions around that can be asked of families, students, so on, around perceptions of safety, leading into questions around community resource officers or CROs, although not sort of leading with that. So reviewing that, it was much like the conversation that we just had on the dais, a sort of refresher of what did we mean when we were putting this together. But it's a useful toolkit, which I believe it's fine to share it with the board as well, because as Scott Emery pointed out, this is something that board directors could even use or suggested questions when engaging with families around safety or sort of questions about that, or sort of open-ended questions that can be asked to guide those conversations. So there was some feedback, some next steps for the remaining meetings this year to continue to refine that. But thank you as always to the community members who engaged in that and really actively engaged and had a great conversation. Any other community updates? No. The board plans to meet next on May 18th, 2026 with a 5 p.m. study session and a 7 p.m. board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the May the 4th, 2026 board meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Director Meekov and seconded by Director Richter that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 10:05 p.m.